Why does earning a 1 lakh salary today feel exactly like making $30,000 did a decade ago? Seriously, you finally hit that dream milestone, the one you worked your entire life for, and yet you're somehow completely broke by the 20th of the month. You sit down to do your budget, and the math just refuses to math. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are decoding the invisible squeeze on your wallet and exploring the massive macroeconomic forces making you feel poorer even as your nominal salary goes up.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? You did everything right. You got the degrees, you worked the late nights, you secured the promotions, you played by all the rules. But your paycheck seems to just evaporate on contact with your bank account. You look around, wondering if you're doing something terribly wrong. Let me just say right now, you aren't crazy. You aren't inherently bad with money. And it is certainly not just because you buy avocado toast or a nice coffee once in a while.
Just look at the sheer scale of this global squeeze. Back in 1975, driving and maintaining a car cost just over $2,000 a year in today's money. Today, that exact same baseline utility has ballooned to over $12,296 annually. Whether we're talking dollars, pounds, or rupees, the essential pillars of modern life, transportation, housing, healthcare, education, have silently mutated into luxury expenses. The fundamental cost of simply existing in the modern world has drastically changed.
To crack this economic mystery, we're going to follow a 5-part roadmap: the paycheck paradox, nominal versus real wages, the cost disease trap, housing as an asset game, and the inequality gap. Let's jump right in.
All right, part 1, the paycheck paradox.
I really want to validate your financial anxiety right out of the gate here. For decades, the fundamental deal of the modern economy was incredibly simple. If you produce more, you will earn more. And thanks to computers, software, and automation, our per-person productivity has absolutely skyrocketed. We are generating more wealth and output per hour than any generation in human history. But the financial benefits of that incredible boom, they have largely bypassed the everyday worker.
You can see the massive divergence right here. Worker productivity is just shooting up like a rocket. But median real wages, what the average person actually takes home in terms of buying power, are functionally flatlining. They've barely moved in decades. The gains from all that increased production didn't trickle down to the middle class. Instead, rising income inequality vacuumed those gains straight up to the very top of the pyramid. You are working harder, producing way more, and getting exactly the same piece of the pie.
Which brings us to part 2, nominal versus real wages.
This right here is where the grand illusion happens. Your nominal wage is just the absolute number printed on your pay stub, like that 1 lakh milestone. It looks fantastic on paper, but your real wage, that is your nominal wage adjusted for inflation. It represents what that 1 lakh rupees can actually buy you at the grocery store or the gas pump today compared to 10 years ago. It strips away the illusion of the raw number and reveals your actual tangible wealth in the real world.
And this all boils down to purchasing power. Think of inflation as an invisible thief just living inside your wallet. If your salary stays exactly the same year over year, but the cost of your rent, groceries, and utilities goes up by 5%, well, congratulations. You just took a 5% pay cut without your boss ever lifting a finger. You are technically poorer, despite your nominal salary remaining totally untouched.
Let's actually put this into practice. In 2005, the average worker got a nice 2.7% nominal raise. Sounds great, right? But wait, inflation that year was 3.4%. That meant workers actually lost money in terms of purchasing power. Now look at 2015. Workers only got a 2.1% raise, which feels like a disappointment, but because inflation was a tiny 0.1%, that smaller raise actually made them richer. It is literally never about what you earn. It is entirely about what your earnings can buy.
Okay, part 3, the cost disease trap.
We know inflation hurts, but some things are hurting us way more than others. In 1980, an American 4-year college cost about $10,000 a year, adjusted for standard inflation. Today, that cost is nearly $31,000. That's a 203% explosion. Why are absolute essentials, the things we literally need to survive and advance in society, like education and healthcare, skyrocketing past normal inflation so aggressively?
It all comes down to an economic ghost called Baumol's cost disease. It works in 3 brutal steps. First, essential services have slow productivity growth. A professor can still only meaningfully teach so many students at a time. Second, even though they aren't hyperscaling like a software company, schools and hospitals still have to raise their wages just to compete for talent in an economy dominated by booming tech and finance sectors. And third, because they have to pay higher salaries without increasing their output, they pass those massive payroll costs directly onto you. Essential services explode in price, squeezing your budget even tighter.
But it's not just a structural trap causing this squeeze. Corporate behavior is definitely throwing gasoline on the fire. Between 2000 and 2024, U.S. corporate profits soared from under 6% of GDP to 11%. So while prices for essential services were naturally rising due to cost disease, corporate profit margins were also doubling across the broader economy. Companies realized they could charge more, and they absolutely did, which further exacerbates this affordability crisis for the average worker just trying to make ends meet.
Moving on to part 4, housing, the asset game.
If you want to know exactly why you feel broke, look no further than where you sleep. Historically, housing was considered a consumption good. It was built for shelter, for utility, for living. Prices were tethered to the reality of local incomes. But today, it has entirely mutated into a financial asset. It is a highly leveraged investment vehicle meant to generate continuous speculative wealth for investors. Housing is no longer about shelter, it's about yield.
This massive global paradigm shift really started in the 1980s. The U.S. deregulated financial institutions and lifted interest rate caps. That very same year in the UK, the right to buy policy essentially privatized millions of affordable public housing units, selling them off to private buyers. By 1982, lending standards were slashed across the board. Governments deregulated the markets, credit exploded, and suddenly a basic human need became a speculative gold rush.
And this birthed the brutal dual-income trap. As lending loosened, banks realized they could lend twice as much money to couples. As dual-income households began outbidding each other with massive, unprecedented lines of credit, property values completely detached from reality. Today, house prices are pegged to combined inflated household salaries. If you're single or if you rely on one income, you are almost entirely priced out of the modern market by default. It's wild.
Finally, part 5, the inequality gap.
So who actually pays the price for all this? The academic consensus is brutal. Inflation acts as a deeply regressive tax. It crushes lower and middle-income households because they spend almost all of their money on the exact essentials, food, energy, rent, that are skyrocketing in price. Plus, they generally lack the real estate portfolios and stock holdings that actually make the wealthy richer during inflationary periods. For the working class, inflation is a wealth destroyer. For the asset class, it's a wealth generator.
But hey, this isn't some unstoppable law of physics. Policy matters immensely. Countries that actually implement robust safety nets, progressive taxes, and inflation-matched wages see far less inequality during economic turbulence. Government intervention is quite often the only thing standing between a generalized cost of living squeeze and a full-blown crisis. How a nation chooses to protect its vulnerable dictates who survives the squeeze.
Globally, the current disparity is absolutely terrifying. The top 10% currently hoards an astounding 76% of all total global wealth. Meanwhile, the bottom 50% of humanity, literally half the planet, owns a mere 2%. That is the ultimate result of wages decoupling from productivity, essential services succumbing to cost disease, and housing turning into a Wall Street asset. The game has shifted entirely.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to remember this one takeaway. The problem isn't always your salary, it's how much your money can actually buy. Whether it's a 1 lakh milestone or a six-figure dollar salary, invisible forces like Baumol's cost disease, the financialization of housing, and the silent erosion of real wages are the real reasons your paycheck feels so incredibly small today.
Which leads us with one final provocative question. Are you working for your money, or is the modern economy working against it? Understanding these invisible forces is the very first step to fighting back and navigating your financial future. Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and keep questioning the numbers behind your everyday life.